47 during a 16-year career. The Knockout has compiled a pro record of 47 wins, 13 losses, 2 draws, 18 by KO. On August 14th, 2012, Mia scored a 10-round win over our First Lady of Boxing, Christy Martin, for the WBC female light middleweight title. And she's fought all over the world, China, Mexico, throughout the US, and including major profile cards in Las Vegas. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for a knockout, the Knockout, Mia St. John. Well, Mia, maybe you're our now new First Lady of Boxing. We still love and adore Christy, but we sure have some strong feelings for you. Right, guys? But welcome, 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 and if you share with us just some of your feelings outside of being chilly, and we're trying to warm you up, but being here at the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, thank you so much. This is my first time here. Out of, a 17-year career, this is the first time I've been here, so I'm really excited to be here. Because, as you know, every fighter's always heard about the Boxing Hall of Fame, and so we've always wanted to be here. It's a great honor, and aside from the cold weather, I brought all summer dresses, so I'm sorry I'm all bundled up. I wasn't prepared for the weather, but thank you all for coming out despite the rain. I'm very excited to be here.
Again, we're so happy to have you. The crowd will definitely have some questions for you, but I wanted to just tap into, the obvious. What led you down the path to the world of boxing, and then to be such a great success for you, and to achieve the levels that you have?
Wow. Well, yeah, my fighting career actually started at the age of 6. My father put me in Taekwondo, and I competed in that sport for many years. And then I got to a point where I decided I was going to turn pro in fighting, and my mother, who was born and raised in Mexico, said, you can do whatever you want, but you have to graduate from college first. So after I graduated college, I said, okay, now I want to turn pro. And unfortunately, there just wasn't much for Taekwondo fighters. The only alternative was kickboxing. So I wrote a letter to Don King, and that was that. He contacted my manager and said, well, if she turns pro in boxing, I'll sign her. And so I signed my first contract with Don King. And then from there I went to Bob Arum. So.
Wow. Did you have good experiences in both? I mean, they took you to the next level.
Don King definitely put me on the map, but he, as you can imagine, how do I say this? Yes, he did rip me off. But, he did put me on the map, and for that I am grateful. And then from there I went to Bob Arum, where I spent a lot of my, the best years of my career opening for Oscar De La Hoya, which was so memorable, And then from there, I went to Dan Goosen Tutor, and then from there I became a free agent, and just went to basically the highest bidder.
Well, Mia, of course, your marketability is big, and but if you can share with us just a few feelings about women athletes and in your sport specifically, your feelings about especially women boxers, and it has grown over the years, and people like Christy Martin helped lay some groundwork, but how do you feel? Women's basketball is very big, and it's very prominent, and so if you can share with us just how the sport has grown and where you feel it is today.
Of course, I don't know. I know that women's boxing has, obviously slowed down a lot, and it, of course, like the 90s, the late 90s, with Christy opening for Tyson and me opening for De La Hoya, it was huge back then, and we have yet to get to that level again. There was some hopes that women's boxing in the Olympics, it would give it, some momentum, but we have yet to see that. So hopefully as the years go on, it's tough for all females in sports. I mean, whether it be basketball or, softball or football, because there is, women's pro football, but you might not have heard of it. But when they're there, it's just very difficult for women in sports. So, it's just kind of, the sports world is very male dominated. So it's difficult for us women, but, we're getting there. We're getting there.
See if we can open up some questions out here, right up front.
Women's boxing is wildly popular in Mexico, Argentina, Germany. What do you think needs to happen in the United States for it to become more popular?
Well, yeah, as you said, yeah, it's very true. That's why I spent the latter part of my career overseas. I just fought in Denmark and spent many fights in Mexico. And we make a lot more money there, and it's just a lot bigger in other parts of the world. To make it bigger here, it depends on the fans. The reason that the promoters don't really put it on the cards anymore is because the ratings, when you put it on ESPN or Fox Sports Net, the ratings are low. And you have to understand that the networks are all about, just like promoters, it's all about money. And if you're not getting the ratings, they're not going to showcase you. So the fans have to demand it. The fans have to want to see it. And if the fans don't tune in, and the fans don't want it, they're not going to show it. So it really is up to the fans.
Another one right up front.
Yeah, thanks for being here. Two questions. Number one, what for you is the most difficult, specific thing to learn in the ring? Whether it be feinting or jabbing or defense or whatever, the one that gave you the most trouble? And also, how come there weren't as many major fight matches made in the women's? It seemed like it was even harder than that. Like if Ann would fight Layla Ali, or if Holly Holm would fight Cecilia Brækhus. It seems like those are harder to make than the men's big matches. So if you could comment on those two questions.
Well, first of all, I actually don't think it's harder. I think it's the same. I mean, people always ask me, why didn't Floyd fight Pacquiao? I think that, who knows what goes on behind closed doors, right? For me, I know for us women, it all boils down to business, to money. And people don't realize that. Like, people say, well, why don't they just fight? Well, there's so much that goes on, like the negotiating, and if they can't come to a mutual agreement, just like Floyd and Manny, like, if you can't come to a mutual agreement, it's just not going to happen. Business is not going to be made. And it's the same thing with women, like I know with Holly and Cecilia, there was just so many, there were so many reasons behind that. What people don't realize is that with Holly and Cecilia, we're not as worldly known, right? So it's not like they can make a fight anywhere. It had to be either in this place or in this place, and so it's very limiting, And the case with Layla Ali and Ann Wolf, again, it's like I think that Layla had. Even though I feel personally that she would have beat Ann Wolf, there was just too much to risk, and she didn't need that. She could leave boxing and still be a huge star and make lots of money, which is what she's doing today, and kudos to her. And then, what was the question? Oh, the hardest thing to learn, because I went from Taekwondo to boxing, so I really learned how to box on national television. Because you have to remember, I went from, the biggest promoter, Don King, to Bob Arum, who threw me on the undercards of Oscar De La Hoya. So I started fighting on national television and had to learn on TV while everybody criticized me. But I went from a Taekwondo fighter, we fight on the back of our legs, not, our weight is on the back, not on the front. So that was hard. I had to learn to shift my weight. And so a lot of times you saw me fighting back, like, you know, like that. And it was very difficult. But I eventually learned it, and eventually my best weapon became my defense. I became a very defensive fighter, which a lot of people in the end said was very boring. But you know, I mean, they say that Floyd Mayweather's boring, but you know, to me it's a game. It's like a chess game, and it's not about. For me, it was never about knocking someone out. It's about, you know, scoring the points and being able to outsmart your opponent. You know, strategy.
Another question right up here.
Welcome, Mia.
Hi.
Two questions. What do you think you can attain from boxing, or you have attained from boxing that you can take into the future, and what is your future going forward beyond boxing?
Oh, thank you. Well, I just retired a month ago. So I'm just adjusting to the retirement, which is difficult because I loved, you know, what I did for so many years. It was my passion. And retirement for every fighter is really, really hard. But boxing, Aram always told me that boxing would simply be a vehicle to take me to much greater things in life. And he was right. Because what it's given me is much more significant than what I ever did in the ring. I don't feel that what I did in the ring was very significant. I went in the ring, I was paid to beat the crap out of people, and to me that was no big deal. Like, who cares? That's not significant in life. What was significant was what I did with that, the fame and the money that I made. I started a foundation for inner city kids here in the United States and in Mexico. And it's called Knowledge is Power and Saber es Poder. And we help inner city kids with education, fitness, mental health. And that was, I feel that was my true purpose in life.
That's great. Another question, I guess.
There's an interesting article in the Ring magazine this month about the problems with headgear. Did you fight with or without headgear, and what do you think of either option? Was it uncomfortable with the headgear, and did you feel any comfort?
Well, you know, I've been criticized for this, my thoughts on this, but I really believe in, as a pro, we can't wear headgear. But in sparring we do. And I've always been an advocate of more protection, headgear and bigger gloves. Because obviously with smaller gloves, you have a greater chance of a knockout. And I don't advocate that. I think that this is a sport and it's a point system, and that's what it should be. I don't believe that if I had my way, what I would do with boxing is make headgear mandatory, make bigger gloves mandatory, and do more of a point system like they do in the amateurs. Because you have to understand that over my 16-year career, I've made many friends that are so dear to me in this sport. And many of them, you know, are old-time fighters who today, some of them are my age and they have brain damage, pugilist dementia, and it's heartbreaking to me. And I don't like seeing that, and I feel like if we had less knockouts, we would see less of that, less concussions. So I'm an advocate of making boxing safer. I mean, I know it's not a safe sport and you'll never make it safe, but there are things that we can do to make it safer for us fighters and my fellow, you know, friends.
Another question right here.
Could you talk a little bit about the general state, in your opinion, of boxing right now as opposed to maybe like 10 years ago?
Well, obviously we've seen a shift because of MMA, you know, which took over a lot of the networks and the fans, and So, very few fighters are really in the spotlight now making any kind of money, unless your name is Floyd Mayweather. And so you've seen a lot of fighters shifting to MMA, which is just, it's just evolution. Fans are demanding MMA. That's what they want to see. So there's really not much you can do except, go with the flow and maybe one day it'll come back. But, luckily we still have, an interest in boxing because anytime Mayweather or Pacquiao or any of those guys fight, people tune in. So this is unfortunate for the rest of the fighters. Yeah.
Okay, Mia, right up front here.
Yes, you thought that Layla would be in. Why did you do that?
And I love Ann. I know Ann and I love her, but just based on their fights and knowing their technique, Layla was faster and she threw straighter punches, whereas Ann was a little bit slower and threw wider punches. And I'm just such a fan of boxing, the sport of boxing, rather than power. And I always feel that speed is better. And if you're a faster fighter with better technique, I feel that you can always beat the heavier, bigger fighter. And Layla definitely had, for somebody her size, she had speed, and she did have the better technique. So, but I like them both. I love them both.
Another question up front.
The best American female boxers, Big Mara fights in Germany, Ava Knight fights in Mexico, Mana Serrano fights in the Dominican. With the popularity of Ronda Rousey, what do they need to do to become more popular and fight in the United States?
Well, I don't think it has anything to do with the women. There's really nothing they can do. I think that, like the female boxers here, like Holly Holm, for example, she's a beautiful girl and she's just a wonderful boxer. But even she had to turn to MMA, just because women's boxing, you just can't really compete with MMA right now, whether you're a male or a female. So I don't think it's any fault of the women or, well, if only they did this, if they did that. I don't think it's just what the fans want to see now.
Questions for me? Oh, sorry. Take one out to the West Coast here.
Hi, Mia.
Hi.
Who's your favorite boxer of all time, and who is your toughest opponent of all time?
My favorite boxer of all time would have to be Tommy Hearns. And of course Oscar De La Hoya, just because of what he did beyond boxing. He built an empire and has helped so many people, so many kids, and has done so much. And I just love that, what a person does with their fame outside the sport. I think that's very important. So, and then my toughest opponent would have to be all 63 of them. I mean, anytime you step in that ring, it's tough. I don't care who you're fighting. It's just tough. Just walking in to that ring, from the dressing room to the ring, is a fight in itself, and it's probably the most frightening thing we've ever experienced. So I'd have to say every single one of my fights have been tough.
What's your question here?
Hi, Mia. There was a noticeable difference between the two fights with Christy Martin, obviously, and obviously a lot of intervening circumstances have come in between the 2 days. Now, it seemed like the first one, she was heavily favored, but you gave her a pretty good run for her money, I thought. I thought it was, it was a decently close fight. The second fight really wasn't. I thought she had it number totally. And do you think it was more a fact because of age in her case, or results of the shooting?
Well, I think a lot of it is, a lot of it was age. I mean, same age.
She had more ring wars.
Right, like we aged differently. And I was also the type of fighter that I never got out of shape. I always, and Christy was the type that, you know, would, like a lot of fighters, you get in shape for the fight. And I don't think with our age, you can do that. And Bernard Hopkins will tell you that too. At our age, you can't afford to get out of shape. You have to stay in shape every single day and stay on your diet every single day. And that's something that I did that she didn't do. So, but still, you know, like, you know, me and Krista will always be friends. You know, we were rivals for so many years that it was inevitable that we would one day become close friends. You know, and I still talk to her to this day, you know, so.
Mia, beyond the foundation, I know it's so early in your retirement, but beyond the foundation, do you have any thoughts and aspirations of what you'd like to continue to do? I mean, obviously, sky's the limit.
Yeah, I know people ask me that. I think, oh my God, I'm only retired for 4 weeks. But yeah, I've thought about it, obviously. And, you know, I wrote a book on fitness, on mental wellness and fitness and nutrition, how they all go together. So, and I put out DVDs, workout DVDs, and so I'm going to stay in fitness, and that's my plan. My next move is to go into fitness and really focus on being in my 40s, and for women in their 40s who constantly are coming up to me saying it's so hard to lose weight, it's so hard to work out every day, what do you do? And that's what I want to give back to these women, is to let them know that, yeah, you can be in your 40s and have kids and still work out every day and still maintain a healthy diet and a healthy weight. So it's possible, and that's my message, and that's why I want to continue with fitness and just letting people know that, you know, it's possible to do this. You know, I don't eat sugar, I don't drink soda, I don't smoke, I don't drink alcohol, and it's possible. You know, it seems impossible to some people, but it's really not. There are ways to do it.
Well, Mia, again, we thank you so much for being a part of our workout. I know you warmed up a few fellas' hearts.